A person's home is their castle. Home is the one place our families should be safe. New York State enacted the multiple dwelling laws to protect tenants, their families, and guests almost 100 years ago. However, many landlords still fail to provide safe housing, resulting in countless unnecessary injuries and deaths each year. Landlords that choose to fail to comply with safety standards and needlessly expose people to unnecessary harm must be held accountable for all injuries that their negligence is a substantial contributing factor in causing. Safety is no accident. For more than 30 years, the New York landlord liability lawyers at Sonin and Genis have been protecting residents from damages caused by negligent landlords. Known as the heavy hitters with heart, they treat their clients with compassion while tirelessly pursuing the parties responsible for their clients' pain and suffering. Landlords and building owners are required to keep their properties safe for all members of our community and for the public good. The purpose of this law is to protect all members of our community. New York State's multiple dwelling law, Section 2 states, insufficient protection against the defective provision for escape from fire and improper sanitation of multiple dwellings in certain areas of the state are a menace to the health, safety, morals, welfare, and reasonable comfort of the citizens of the state, and that the establishment and maintenance of proper housing standards requiring sufficient light, air, sanitation, and protection from fire hazards are essential to the public welfare. New York State's multiple dwelling law, Section 80 states, the owner shall keep all and every part of a multiple dwelling, the lot on which it is situated, and the roofs, yards, courts, passages, areas, or alleys clean and free from vermin, dirt, filth, garbage, or other thing or matter dangerous to life or health. Landlord and premises liability cases are rarely straightforward. They involve a wide range of factors, laws, and parties, including New York State's multi-dwelling laws, New York City's administrative code, New York State and New York City codes, rules, and regulations, the National Safety Council, and other codes. Unfortunately, there are many landlords that break the law and fail to properly maintain their premises and needlessly subject members of our community to unnecessary harm. In this insider-exclusive network TV special, Justice in America, Norma Stubbs' Story, we visit with Bob Janus at Sonin Genis Law, as we take you inside today's legal system, examining Bob's strategies and his clients' thoughts, and in vivid detail showing you the often heartbreaking stories of cases like his clients, Norma Stubbs and her niece, Demaya, for whom he successfully settled their case for $7.75 million. These victims could be you or me one day, and if you are so unlucky, you will quickly find that justice in America is a hard-won battle where very few defendants ever do the right thing. And you need experienced and passionate trial lawyers like Bob Janus, founder of the Sonin Genis law firm, who wage these battles with their own financial resources to get their clients justice. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from New York. It is my great pleasure to introduce Bob Janus to the show. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Hi, thank you.
How's everything here in New York?
Terrific.
Yeah. Tell our audience a little bit about your law firm and the type of practice that you have and have done over the years.
Our law firm is Sonin Genis. We've been in practice. Our office in the Bronx. We chose the Bronx for a reason. We've stayed in the Bronx for a reason. We love the Bronx. We love the people of the Bronx. Our practice focuses on people who are either catastrophically injured or have died as a result of negligence or malpractice. We've tried cases in 7 states, but we try to stay in New York State where possible.
Besides practicing law, you get involved in a lot of civic and community activities, don't you? What are they?
Well, a lot of the things I do are still kind of law-related, but one of the civic things I like to do is there's this entity called Happiness is Camping. and it was the first of its kind in the country. And it's designed solely for children with cancer so that they can go and have like a normal summer and be with other kids like them. The doctors and nurses volunteer their time, and I do some volunteer work there. It's in Blairstown, New Jersey, and it's a great cause.
Bob, today we're here to talk about another case that you were successful in getting a resolution for, Norma Stubbs. Tell our audience a little bit about what happened to Norma Stubbs and her niece.
This is a fire case, and here the city of New York was a building owner, the landlord, and the city violated standards that have been in existence since before 1900. Yeah. It's a known risk that you need to have doors that automatically close because of fire, to contain smoke. Here, the city of New York had apartments with doors that were not self-closing. So a tenant on the first floor has a religious candle. It turns over. There's a fire. She runs out of her apartment. Her door does not close. This allows fire and smoke to spread. So that Norma Stubbs and her little niece at the time, Demaya Chappelle, are in their apartment. And it's the middle of the night, and they start to hear things. But when Norma Stubbs goes to open her door to see what's going on, smoke comes billowing in. She tries to shut the door, but again, her door doesn't properly close either. So the smoke comes in, and both Norma Stubbs and Demaya Chappelle had serious injuries from smoke inhalation. In the smoke is carbon dioxide, which can cause brain damage, which is what happened here.
Yeah, and as you're talking a little bit about the injuries, we're showing them on screen. Tell us what happened with these injuries.
There's different things. You get the soot and the smoke, but it's got the carbon dioxide. So it's going into your body, and you're losing oxygen. And your brain needs oxygen to function properly. So they're both oxygen deprived, or it's called a hypoxic event. You're oxygen deprived, causing different injuries. So the child became brain damaged, and the brain affects your ability to walk, to think, to do all kinds of things. So this was a girl who in first grade was at a fifth grade level. By the time she's in fifth grade, she's not even in a first grade level. Really? And we have her aunt had a serious injury from the smoke, and she needed what's called a tracheotomy, a tube literally in her throat, just for her to be able to breathe and speak. It's horrible.
Yeah. What were some of the legal strategies that you used in pursuing this case?
To show how the city of New York has a double standard. For a private landlord, would they have allowed this? Of course not. So, but for their own city-owned building, they chose not to perform proper inspections. They chose not to make sure that the doors were self-closing. They chose to ignore codes that literally went back to 1901.
It would seem to me that, in a lot of municipalities around the country, they put caps on the amount of money you can claim from the government. A New York City-owned apartment, correct? You don't have that here, fortunately.
Thank God in New York State we don't have that. In New York, at least, we have a tradition of honoring the Constitution and of honoring people's rights. Yeah. And to say there should be an arbitrary cap or limit, so somebody could be brain damaged, catastrophic injury, and to say that, like in Texas, you should only get $250,000, it's absurd.
Yeah. What were some of the issues you had to prove this case, like defective doors? Were just her door, or all the doors defective, or a number of them?
A number of the doors here were defective, and we did that.
How do you prove that?
Well, we knew it from the fire department. The fire marshals did an investigation, and they showed how the doors were open, did not close, and that's what allowed the smoke and the flames to spread.
Right. What were the results of this case?
The results of the case were, after these people had horrible injuries, and the city fought us every step along the way, tooth and nail, and then we had what's called a ton of motions eliminate. In other words, the city planned on doing a trial by smear, not basing it on facts, not basing it on law, but
not based on the case, but based on the character of Norma Stubbs.
Not even the character. What they wanted to claim, hey, it's really easy to quote Lyndon Johnson. You could call somebody, well, I'm not going to do Lyndon Johnson's quote, but you could call somebody a bad name and accuse them of a bad thing. Now they have to sit there and deny it. Yeah. So they had no proof of any of the name calling they wanted to.
This is in front of the jury, right?
They wanted to. Yeah. But what happened was I realized that this is what they were going to do. Yeah. So I made what's called motions eliminate. Judge, they can't even attempt to go into A, B, C, or D. It's improper. There's no basis for it. And I want to nip it in the bud. And once the city saw that that's what the judge was going to do, and they realized they could not defend this case by smear, That's when they settled the case.
And they settled it for what, $7.75 million?
Correct.
How did they arrive at that number?
Well, the city naturally wanted to pay less, but we were in negotiations. We tried to get as much as we can for our clients. That was fair and reasonable. They're trying to pay as little, but they realized once I had beat them on these other issues, they were going to lose this case, and a jury could have easily come back with far greater amounts.
You know, as a lawyer and on the plaintiff side, it must sometimes disgust you to see other lawyers employing these tactics that really have nothing to do with the case. I mean, your client was injured. And your client was injured because the city didn't follow the regulations, right?
Right.
And they know it, but they don't want to pay any money and they don't want to be accountable.
That's correct.
That's disgusting.
It is.
And remember, everybody, when they get a license to practice law, they're required to uphold the law. I would not say that the lawyers representing the city are upholding the law because they know what the law is, right?
Well, they're supposed to know what the law is, and they're supposed to follow the law. Some lawyers do. There's some terrific attorneys from the city of New York, and there's many great ethical defense attorneys. But unfortunately, there's some who get a little overzealous, and they try to do things that they know are improper.
In the city of New York, there's lots of buildings. And I think more than any other city in the United States, you got more regulations for the benefit of tenants and, you know, property owners and stuff like that. What are the landlord's maintenance responsibilities to tenants?
Have to keep the building safe. Nothing onerous.
Keep it safe. What does it mean?
Well, they should A, comply with all building codes or minimum requirements. You got to remember, these codes, these regulations, they're not the maximum, they're the minimum.
Right.
Okay? It's like, you know, you have a speed limit. You're not supposed to go above a certain speed. You shouldn't go below a certain minimum speed either, but there's a red light. What are you supposed to do? So here we have regulations. They establish fire codes. And as I said, these codes, some of them are well over 150 years old at this point, and they're there for safety. They're there to keep us safe, and they should do so.
Yeah. Now, I understand that Norma Stubbs had made a complaint or had made mention to the supervisor about her door not closing all the way.
Yes.
So what does a tenant do when they make a complaint to a supervisor, a building owner, whatever, and they don't make the repairs? What rights do they have?
It's also, what rights do they have is they have the right to follow up on it, but the bigger problem is if it's not documented.
Yeah.
So what I would advise any tenant, if you have a complaint, put it in writing. Because otherwise, when you make your oral complaint, it's so easy for them to, nope, never happened, and they deny it.
And do you put it in writing to the supervisor of the building?
I would put it to the city of New York.
Yeah.
Okay, in New York we have 311. You could even do it on an email. I'd make written complaints that way. But let's say you're in a private building, same thing. You could make the complaint in writing to the municipality or to the building owner, the managing agent.
Would you say that property owners generally take into consideration the welfare of their tenants?
It depends. Some landlords are great, some are horrible. And what I've seen, at least in my practice, is a lot of the landlords that cater to the people of lower income, they're slumlords. And they really don't care about the people that live in their buildings. They are treated terribly because it's all about profit to the landlord. They don't want to put money into the building to make it safe because they just want to make more profit. You don't usually have these problems in the high-end luxury buildings.
Yeah, you know, I understand you've been a trial lawyer for how many years?
About 36 years.
36 years. And you teach a lot of continuing legal education classes, right?
All over the country.
In this particular case, where you have clearly the facts on your side, the facts aren't the only factor, if you will, that are going to make a case, are they?
It's the facts and how you use them, how you sequence them, and how you deal with bad facts, so to speak.
So what would you recommend to other, you know, to clients as well as to lawyers when you introduce evidence? How do you present a case like this? Because it would seem to me that picking a jury in this case would be relatively pretty easy. You just got to find someone who's a tenant, right? Who's experienced these problems before, yes?
No.
No.
Because just because somebody's a tenant doesn't mean they're going to relate to my client. What if they're a tenant in that luxury building? They can't relate to being in a non-luxury building. That's not their frame of reference. So you have to ask a lot of questions to find out jurors' opinions, their attitudes, because you can't stereotype people or just make certain assumptions. You have to ask the questions to find out, because just because you might live in a luxury building now, I don't know what the rest of your life was like and what your background is.
Yeah, in all your trials, has any juror ever surprised you with the way they came out with their decision?
I've been surprised many a time by jurors, sometimes pleasantly surprised. I remember one trial I had years ago, I thought this particular juror hated me. Every time I stood up, she had a little attitude.
Yeah.
And when I gave my summation, she wasn't even looking at me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, she hates me.
Right.
When I got, in that case, it was like a $1.75 million verdict on the injury. And the jurors afterwards
You
were
found out
talking
she was
to
a
us.
four-person.
And she like ran out. And I'm talking to the other jurors, and I said to them, she hated me, right? And they looked at me shocked. What are you talking about? She was your best juror. She was the one that wanted us all. I said, well, why did she have this attitude every time I spoke? And she went like that. They said, oh, she didn't even need to hear you talk. She knew she liked you, was on your side. So that was a wonderful, pleasant surprise.
Yeah. How about surprise negatively?
Had that too. I've had jurors that, give me the thumbs up, and they think, yeah, thumbs up is I'm going to give it to you.
Are they allowed to do that?
They're not supposed to communicate with us, but sometimes they do.
I mean, is that kind of illegal communication between a lawyer and the
Well,
juror?
they're not doing it one-on-one. That would be really a problem. But they might do it in front of other people where everyone can see them. They're doing that.
Is it true that when a jury comes in with a verdict, you don't know what it is yet, they look at you, that's favorable. They don't look at you, it's not favorable?
I think jurors try very hard to be poker face.
Yeah.
So they really don't want you to know.
Yeah.
Sometimes they will not look at you, or they will look at you,
Yeah.
and that may kind of give you a hint as to how it's going to happen, but you don't always know.
Yeah, finally, how do you pick your jurors when you have a whole pool of people up there?
Carefully. Truthfully, I ask questions. I need to find out how they feel honestly.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to worry about hurting my feelings, because not that they care about that, but I really want them, I encourage them to be honest, because if I don't know what they think, what their opinions are, what their experiences are, I can't make an educated decision of who I want and who I don't want.
We appreciate your success in this story, in this case, but I also want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, and it's success for all tenants.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.